A new study is here. It looks at DNA, it looks at very old DNA. It is about ancient Australia. It says one big thing. It says, we must look again. Our timeline must change. This is a simple story of that change, a story that starts with a surprise. For a long time, we pictured a single, bold journey. A small group of pioneers arriving on a vast, empty continent. We drew lines on maps, showing one path, one moment. But the land itself holds older, more complex truths, waiting to be seen. This new science asks us to listen to those truths in a different way. The story of Australia is one of the most profound human stories on Earth. It is a story of survival against all odds. It is a story of incredible journeys across seas, deserts. It is a story of deep connection to place, a connection that has lasted for tens of thousands of years. We thought we had the basic chapters right. People arrive, they spread out, they adapt. But the details, the timing, the number of groups, how they related to each other, these were still mysteries. The new study shines a bright light into those deep, shadowy corners of the past. What it reveals is astonishing. Imagine a puzzle with thousands of pieces. For years, we have been trying to fit them together. We had pieces from archaeology, ancient tools, rock art, old campsites. We had pieces from geology, changing sea levels, shifting riverbeds. And we had the most important pieces of all, the living knowledge of First Nations peoples, their stories, songs. The new DNA study provides a whole new set of puzzle pieces. They are tiny, but they help connect everything else. The picture is both brand new and incredibly ancient. This essay is about that new picture. It is a journey through time guided by this groundbreaking science. We will travel back to the first arrivals. We will cross the continent as it was then, a giant landmass called Sahul. We will feel the chill of the last ice age. We will watch the seas rise to shape the Australia we know today. To understand this new story, we first need to understand DNA. What is it? Think of DNA as a tiny instruction book. It is a very, very long book, found inside almost every cell of your body. This book is written in a simple code, using just 4 letters. The order of these letters holds the instructions for building you and running you. It helps decide the color of your eyes, the shape of your nose, and so much more. It is the blueprint of life, passed down from your parents, from their parents before them, stretching back through time. This book of life is not just about you, it is also a history book. As DNA is passed from generation to generation, tiny changes like typos can happen. These changes are rare, but they build up over thousands of years. By comparing the DNA of different people, scientists can see how closely related they are. If 2 people have very similar DNA, it means they share a recent ancestor. If their DNA is more different, their shared ancestor lived much further back in time. It's like tracing branches back to the trunk of a massive family tree. So how do we read this ancient history book? Scientists can take a small sample, like saliva or a drop of blood, from a living person. They can also carefully extract DNA from the remains of people who lived long ago, like from a piece of bone or a tooth. Using powerful machines, they can read the sequence of the DNA code. Then, using clever computer programs, they can compare these sequences. They can build family trees that span not just a few generations, but tens of thousands of years, revealing the epic journeys of our ancestors. The most important thing to remember is that this is not just data. This DNA comes from people. It is their heritage, their family story. Now let's go back in time, far, far back. We travel to a time over 50,000 years ago. The world looked different then. Much of the planet's water was locked up in giant ice sheets, so the sea level was much lower than it is today. Because of this, Australia was not an island. It was connected to nearby lands, New Guinea, Tasmania forming a single giant continent called Sahul. It was a world of new plants, strange animals, wide open spaces, a land that had never known human footsteps before this time. The first people to reach Sahul were some of the greatest explorers in human history. They were skilled navigators, traveling in small groups by sea from the islands of Southeast Asia. It was not one accidental trip. The new DNA study suggests it was a deliberate and significant migration. It may have happened in several waves, with different groups arriving over a relatively short period. They landed on the northern shores, the western shores of Sahul, bringing tools, their knowledge of the sea, their rich cultural lives. Their arrival marked the beginning of a new chapter for this continent. Imagine standing on that ancient shoreline for the first time. The air would have been different. The sounds of the birds and animals would have been new. The scent of the eucalyptus, the feel of the red earth under your feet. It would have been a whole new world to learn. These first people were not just surviving. They were learning, adapting, and creating. The new DNA study shows that people spread out with incredible speed. In just a few thousand years, they had populated the entire continent. From the tropical rainforests of the north to the cold, windswept valleys of the south, people made their homes. They followed the coastlines, which were rich with fish, shellfish, other coastal resources. The coast was like a natural highway, guiding them around the edges of the vast land. The study reveals two main routes of this early expansion. One group moved down the west coast, another moved down the east coast. These two groups remained largely separate for tens of thousands of years. They were separated by the vast and challenging deserts in the center of the continent. This early separation is still visible in the DNA of First Nations people today. It is a genetic echo of an ancient journey, a split in the road taken by their ancestors over 50,000 years ago. It shows how early the distinct regional groups we see today began to form. But people did not only stick to the coasts. Some brave groups turned inland, venturing into the arid heart of the continent. The Australian deserts are some of the driest and most unpredictable environments on Earth. To live there required immense knowledge, skill, and resilience. These people learned to read the subtle signs of the land. They knew where to find water in a dry creek bed. They knew which plants were good for food or medicine. They followed the cycles of the seasons. The DNA shows that these inland populations also became established very early and remained deeply connected to their specific regions. For a long time, the story of ancient Australia included a major late chapter of change. Some researchers proposed that around 4,000 to 5,000 years ago, there was a new migration into the continent. This idea came from a few things: the arrival of the dingo, a shift in stone tool technology, some linguistic patterns. The theory was that a new group of people, perhaps from India or Southeast Asia, arrived and spread, mixing with or replacing the existing populations. This was presented as a major event that reshaped the continent's human landscape. Now we come to the twist in our story. The new comprehensive DNA study tested this idea directly. It looked for genetic evidence of a large-scale migration into the continent during this period, and it found nothing. There was no big wave of new people, there was no major replacement of the population. The genetic signatures from India that were thought to be from this time were found to be much, much more recent, from the colonial period. The dingo did arrive, yes, but it seems to have been brought in small numbers by traders or visitors, not by a wave of new settlers. The people who were here before the dingo arrived were the same people who were here after. So the biggest surprise, the big twist from this new study, is a story of continuity. The main genetic lineages of First Nations peoples today can be traced back directly to the very first people who arrived over 50,000 years ago. They are the descendants of the people who spread across Sahul, who survived the Ice Age, and who watched the seas rise. There was no major break in the chain. There was no replacement. There was only an incredibly long, unbroken line of descent right here on this continent. It is the longest story of continuous human settlement anywhere on Earth outside of Africa. This changes everything. So what does this all mean for us today on the 13th of September 2025? It means that ancient Australia is not ancient at all. It is not a lost world confined to museums or history books. It is a living history. It lives in the First Nations people who walk this land today, carrying the genetic and cultural inheritance of their ancestors. Their connection to this continent is the deepest and longest in the world. This is not a political statement. It is a scientific and historical fact, now confirmed more strongly than ever. By walking together, listening to both science and the ancient voices of this land, we can all become part of its next chapter, holding the past, present, and future with care. Past, present, future.